Okay, we're back in Mesillat Yesharim. This is chapter 22, the virtue of humility. Anavah. Let's see. We have chapter 2 and chapter 23. This is January 21st, 2025. So here we go. We've already discussed the unworthiness of haughtiness and how from this we were able to infer the praiseworthiness of humility. Now, however, we will define the main components of humility in a more direct manner, and in this way, the essential nature of haughtiness will be clarified. The principle of humility is that a person should regard himself as unimportant in all circumstances. This is truly the antithesis of haughtiness, and the results that emerge from this will be just the opposite of those that emerge from haughtiness. Through analysis, we will discover that humility is dependent on both thought and deed. Before one can act in accordance with humility, one must have humility of thought. One who attempts to be humble in deed without first cultivating an inner commitment toward humility belongs to that class of pseudo-humble and evil people mentioned above, whose hypocrisy is greater than any evil found in the world. We will now define these aforementioned components. Humility of thought means that a person should contemplate and realize that he is unworthy of praise and honor, let alone any superiority above others, due to his natural faults and due to the limitations of what we have already accomplished as well. In terms of his own faults, it is obvious that it is impossible for any person, regardless of the level of perfection he has achieved, to be without numerous faults. These may derive from his own nature, from family and relatives, from certain things that have happened to him, or from his own deeds. For there is no righteous person in the whole land who will always do good and not sin. Kohelet, that's Ecclesiastes 7:20. All of these are human flaws that prevent him from becoming conceited. Even if he possesses many virtues, these faults will suffice to dampen them. Wisdom is what brings a person to conceit and haughtiness more than anything else, because it derives from a noble quality that is inherent in the person himself, the intellect. There is no such thing as a wise person who does not err and who doesn't need to learn from his peers, and quite often he will learn even from his students. Therefore, what right does one have to be conceited concerning the wisdom that he possesses? But with a clear mind, a person, no matter how wise and distinguished he truly is, will realize that he observes and contemplates that there is no room for his haughtiness or conceit. A person who is intelligent by nature, who naturally knows more than others, acts in accordance with his natural instincts, like a bird flying upwards, since that is part of its nature, and an ox who intrinsically pulls with all its strength. Similarly, a person of high intelligence is that way by nature. And if another person who is not as intelligent as he had his intelligence, he would be just as clever. Therefore, there is no reason for conceit and haughtiness. Rather, one who is very wise has a responsibility to impart his wisdom to those who are in need of it, as we see in the saying of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai in Perkei Avot 2:8. It says, "If you have learned much Torah, do not take credit for it, for you were created to do so." Similarly, one who is wealthy may rejoice in his lot, yet it is his responsibility to assist those who are in need. Similarly, if he is strong, it is his responsibility to assist those who falter and to protect the oppressed. This is comparable to the servants of the household, in which each servant is assigned a different task and must fulfill his appointed job if all the household duties and requirements are to be completed. Looked at objectively, there is no place for haughtiness here. The type of analysis and contemplation previously mentioned are appropriate for any person who has a clear mind, one that is not warped. When all the above becomes clear to him, he can truly be called a humble person, one whose humility is internalized in his heart, and which recalls what David said to Michal in Shmuel Beit, 2 Samuel 6:22, "And if I were to be even more lowly within my own eyes." Our sages of blessed memory have said in Sota 5b, "How great are those who are lowly in spirit. For when the Beit HaMikdash was in existence, a person would sacrifice a burnt offering and would be credited for the burnt offering. He would sacrifice a meal offering and he would be credited for the meal offering. Yet he who is humble in mind is considered as if he has sacrificed all of the offerings possible, as it says in Tehillim, Psalms 51:19. The preferred divine sacrifices are those of a broken spirit. This is the praise given to the lowly in spirit, for they possess humility in their hearts and thoughts." And Moses was the most humble person, it says. And they also said in Hulin 89a, with reference to the verse, "Not because you are more numerous than all the nations did the Eternal desire you." Devarim, that's Deuteronomy 7:7. The Holy One, blessed be He, said to them, to Israel, "My sons, I desire you, for even when I imbue you with greatness, you diminish yourselves before me. I bestowed greatness upon Abraham," he said, "and I am dust and ashes." Bereshit, that's Genesis 18:27. And it says, I bestowed greatness upon Moshe and Aaron, and they said, what are we? In Shemot, that's Exodus chapter 16, verse 7. I bestowed greatness upon David, and he said, but I am worm and not a man. Tehillim, that's Psalms 22, verse 7. All of this emerges from a truthful heart that will not be swayed by all the virtues that one may possess. Such an individual knows very well that due to other shortcomings that are an inseparable part of him, his virtues will not elevate him from the state of lowliness. Even with regard to those mitzvot, those virtues that he does possess, he has yet to attain the ultimate goal. And even if his only shortcoming was that he was made of flesh and blood and born of woman, that alone should suffice to acquit him with his small worth and his inadequacies, and then he would realize how utterly inappropriate conceit is. Any virtue that he acquires is nothing less than a divine act of benevolence that has been done in his favor, even though he is by his very nature and physical makeup lowly and shameful. Therefore he must thank the one who has graced him in this manner, humble himself before him all the more so. This is analogous to a pauper who has received a gift. Such a person has to feel shame, and the more he is treated with kindness, and the greater will his shame be. And the same applies to any individual, for his eyes are open and permit him to see that his attainment of his virtues is from the Eternal, blessed be he. As David HaMelech said in Tehillim, at Psalms 116:12, how can I repay the Eternal for all his kindness to me? We have already seen outstandingly pious people who, despite all their piety, were punished for crediting themselves for their achievements. For example, our sages of blessed memory, in reference to Nehemiah ben Chaliah, said in Sanhedrin 93b, why was his book not referred to by his name? Because he took the credit himself. Similarly, Hezekiah said in Yeshayahu, that's Isaiah chapter 38, verse 17, regarding the lack of peace, it was bitter for me. It was bitter for me. For the Holy One, blessed be he, had answered him in Yeshayahu, that's Isaiah 37:35, and I will protect this city, to redeem it for my sake and for the sake of David my servant. And as they of blessed memory have commented in Berachot 10b, whoever credits himself for his achievements will find them being attributed to others. You see from here that one should not take credit for good acts, and in particular one should not become conceited and arrogant on account of them. All of this, however, is only relevant for one who is capable of internalizing, someone who will be like Abraham, Moshe, David, and the other pious individuals we have mentioned. Yet we, orphans, born of orphans, have no need for all of this, for we carry within us so many faults that it does not take great analysis to perceive how lowly we are. And all our wisdom is like naught, for our greatest sages cannot be regarded as anything other than the disciples of former generations. This is very important to understand and to be cognizant of, as it will prevent our hearts from swelling needlessly. Rather, we must recognize that our understanding is superficial, that our minds are extremely weak, that ignorance is widespread among us, that error is multiplying, and the knowledge that we do possess is minuscule. Therefore, conceit is surely out of place. Instead, what is called for is shame and lowliness. This is obvious. So far, we have discussed humility in relation to one's thoughts. Now we will discuss humility in relation to one's deeds. This subject has 4 parts to it: conducting oneself in a lowly manner, bearing disparagement, being averse to positions of authority, and fleeing from honor and respecting others. The first of these, conducting oneself in a lowly manner, relates to one's manner of speech, this physical bearing, his place within the community, and all of his movements. In relation to one's manner of speech, the sages of blessed memory have said in Yoma 86a, one should always speak softly to people, and it is explicitly stated in Scripture, Kohelet 9:17, the words of the wise, softly spoken, are accepted. For one's words must have dignity and not be disparaging. Similarly, it says in Mishle, that's Proverbs 11:12, one who disgraces his fellow is heartless. And it says in Proverbs 18:3, when the wicked comes in, with him comes disgrace. So in relation to a person's physical bearing, they said in Sanhedrin 88b, they sent from there, Eretz Yisrael, and it's quoted, who will merit the world to come? One who is humble, whose knee is lowly, and who is bent over when he enters and bent over when he leaves. And he should not walk erect nor walk too formally, taking small steps, but rather as one who is going about his affairs. Similarly, they of blessed memory said in Berachot 43b, whoever walks erect is regarded as if he were pressing upon the feet of the divine presence. And it states in Yeshayahu, that's Isaiah chapter 10, verse 33, those of elevated stature will be cut down. Regarding his place within the community, he should associate with those who conduct themselves in a lowly manner, and not with those who conduct themselves in an exalted manner. This is also explicitly stated in Scripture. In Mishle, Proverbs, chapter 25, verses 6 and 7, it says, "Do not glorify yourself before a king, and in the place of prominent people do not stand. For it is better to be told, 'Move upward,' than to be humiliated before the nobleman, as your own eyes have seen." Similarly, as sages of blessed memory have said in Vayikra Rabbah 1:5, "Distance yourself 2 or 3 seats from where you should be sitting, and remain there until you are told, 'Move forward.' And do not move forward on your own, lest you be told, 'Move back.'" Referring to one who belittles himself, they of blessed memory have said in Bava Metzia 85b, "Anyone who belittles himself in this world for the sake of the words of Torah will become great in the world to come." And in reference to this, they said in Yalkut Shimoni, Yehezkel 361, "Remove the turban and lift off the crown." Yehezkel, that's Ezekiel 21:31, it says means that whoever is great in this world will be small in the world to come. Okay, and conversely, anyone who is small in this world is destined for greatness in the world to come. And they have said in Sota 5a, "One should always learn from the wisdom of his master, for the Holy One, blessed be he, bypassed all the mountains and hills and chose Mount Sinai as the place of dwelling for the divine presence, because of its lowliness." Similarly, they said in Rosh Hashanah 17b, "For the remnant of his inheritance," which is a verse from Micha 7:18, refers to one who treats himself like leftovers. So, for the remnant of his inheritance refers to one who treats himself like leftovers. The second category of humility in relation to one's deeds is that of bearing disparagement. Our sages of blessed memory explicitly said in Rosh Hashanah 17a, "Whose transgression does he pardon? The Eternal? That of the one who overlooks the sin that another has committed against him." That's why I've said in quite a few videos already that if you see someone who's being disparaged or being verbally attacked, and that person says nothing, run to them for a blessing, because they have a particular type of atonement at that time. It says right here, "Whose transgressions does he pardon? That of the one who overlooks the sin that another has committed against him." Okay. They also said in Shabbat 88b, in reference to those who are insulted and do not respond with insult, who hear abuse directed to themselves and do not respond. Scripture states in Shoftim, that's Judges 5:31, "Those who love the Eternal will be like the emerging sun in all its glory." And they recounted some of the great humility of Bava ben Buta in the following words in Nedarim 66b. "There was a Babylonian who came to live in Eretz Yisrael and got married there. One day he told his wife, 'Cook for me 2 talfeh.' These are feet of the cow. Misunderstanding the Babylonian Aramaic dialect that he used, she cooked 2 talfehi, 2 lentils. He became enraged. The next day he told her, 'Cook for me a huge amount.' She assumed that if he told her 2 again, she would cook the same amount as the previous day, and by exaggerating, he would at least get a normal portion. She went and cooked a huge amount for him. He then said, 'Bring me 2 butzine, watermelons.' And she again misunderstood his dialect, brought him 2 earthenware oil lamps. In his anger, he said to her, 'Go and break them on the Resha Dabava, the top of the gate post.' Bava ben Buta was sitting in judgment at the time, and she went and broke the oil lamps over his head, since she thought Resha Dabava meant the head of Bava. Bava ben Buta asked her, 'What have you done?' She replied, 'That's what my husband commanded me to do.' He then said, 'Since you have fulfilled the will of your husband so faithfully, the divine presence will bring forth from you 2 sons like Bava ben Buta.'" And in reference to Hillel being, when telling of his great humility in Tractate Shabbos 30b, they said, the rabbis taught one should always be as humble as Hillel. And Rabbi Abahu, with all his humilities, still did not find himself worthy of being called humble. And this is what they have said in Sota 40a. Rabbi Abahu said, "I used to consider myself a humble person, but then I saw Rabbi Abba from Akko, and publicly explaining something only to have his interpreter explain it differently, and he did not show any anger. I said to myself, I am not a humble person. Being averse to positions of authority and fleeing from honor are spelled out in the Mishnah, Perkei Avot 110. It says, love labor and be averse to positions of authority. And they also said in Perkei Avot 4:7, one whose heart swells when making halakhic decisions is a wicked and an arrogant fool. And they said, based on Eruvin 13b, one who pursues honor will find that honor escapes him. And they also said in Pesikta Rabati 22:4, do not be quick to enter into controversy. Which is a quote from Mishlei, that's Proverbs chapter 25, verse 8, which means, and this is a continuation from Pesikta Rabati 22:4, it says, do not be quick to enter into controversy, means that one should never run to assume a position of authority. Why? Lest you will not know what to do in the end. For on the next day they will come to you with all their questions, and how will you answer them? It's just like, politicians, they get in a position, they don't really know what to do. They have other people do stuff for them. And from the same source, Rabbi Menachama said in the name of Rabbi Tanchum, whoever accepts a position of authority for his own benefit is no different from an adulterer who derives pleasure from the body of a woman. And from the same source, Rabbi Abahu said, the Eternal says, I am called holy. If you find that you lack any of the attributes that I possess, do not take on a position of authority. And the disciples of Rabban Gamliel will bear this out. Although they were in dire financial need, they refused positions of authority, as related in the portion dealing with Cohen Mashuach Harayot 10a. So do you think that I am giving you positions of authority? I am giving you servitude. And they also said in Pesachim 87b, how lamentable is a position of authority, for it buries its occupants. From where do we know this? From Yosef, who ruled with authority and thereby died earlier than his brothers, as he lived 110 years. Berachot 55a. In summation, a position of authority is nothing less than a great burden mounted on the shoulders of one who is carrying it. As long as one is merely an individual living among his people and mingling with other individuals, he is only responsible for himself, with his own needs. Yet once he is raised to a position of authority and power, he becomes responsible for everyone who is under his rule and dominion, because it is his duty to oversee all of them, to guide them toward knowledge and understanding, and to steer their deeds along the right path. But if that ideal is not achieved, the sages applied the words in the quote from Devarim Rabbah 110, and their guilt is on your heads. This phrase derives from Devarim 113, so Deuteronomy 113. And I appointed them as leaders over you. Okay, it says, as for honor, it is no more than the greatest of vanities, leading a person away from himself and from his master, and causing him to totally disregard his duty. One who is cognizant of this will surely spurn and despise it, and the praises that people give him will weigh heavily upon him. For when he sees how they amplify their praises for what in reality he does not possess, he will feel only shame and will sigh over the fact that he not only has to contend with his own misfortune, his lack of these virtues, but also with the false praise that people heap upon him, which further adds to his shame. The fourth category involves respecting all people. We have been taught in Perkei Avot 4:1, who is respected? One who respects other people. And they also said in Pesachim 113b, from where do we know that one must respect a peer, even if one knows that his peer is greater than him in only a single matter? Furthermore, we have been taught in Perkei Avot 4:15, one should always be the first to greet others. They said about Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai that no one, not even a Gentile in the marketplace, ever preceded him with a greeting. Berachot 17a. One's obligation to respect his peers relates to speech and deeds. And the sages of blessed memory have already given an account in Yevamot 62b of the 24,000 disciples of Rabbi Akiva who died as a result of their disrespectful behavior they adopted toward one another. Just as a disgrace is something that is associated with the wicked, as stated in the verse mentioned previously, Mishlei, that's Proverbs chapter 18, verse 3, when the wicked comes in, with him comes disgrace. In a corresponding way, respect is associated with righteousness. Honor resides with them and will not depart. And it says in Yeshayahu 24:23, it's Isaiah 24:23, before his elders there is honor. The central components of humility have now been defined. Their specific details, like all specific classifications abroad and according to the nature of the subject and conditions of time and place, can be dealt with according to this formula. Let the wise man listen and add insight. Mishlei, that's Proverbs 1:5. It is certain that humility comes. It is certain that humility removes many obstacles from man's paths and draws him closer to many good things. For a person who possesses humility will have minimal concern for this world and will thereby not be envious of its vanities. Furthermore, his company is very pleasant, and people approve of him. It is obvious that such a person will be brought neither to anger nor argument. Rather, all that he does is done quietly and calmly. Fortunate is the person who has the privilege to acquire this virtue. Our sages of blessed memory have already stated in Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud of Shabbat 1:3, just as wisdom made a wreath for its head, humility made a heel for its soul. The entire expanse of wisdom cannot compare to it. This is clear-cut. It, in the quoted passage, refers to the fear of the eternal. The intent of this passage is to teach us that while wisdom is merely an ornament that enhances the virtue of fearing the eternal, humility is the foundation upon which one acquires fear of the eternal.